Velma has been a topic of discussion for quite some time now, and the conversation will likely continue as more episodes get released every week. The first 4 episodes are officially out, and to say that people were disappointed would be an understatement. The bad writing for the show has been at the forefront of the debate, but so has the pushback been from defenders' statements that the poor reviews only come down to online trolls who hate any type of diversity. Now, the diversity topic can be an entire discussion on its own, but so can the actual writing of the show, or in this case, lack thereof. I am sure that by this point most people are completely familiar with this dumpster fire, but for the fortunate and lucky few who have not watched this show yet, you are probably better off just staying as far away from this as you can. The premise of this show has nothing to do with the original Scooby-Doo, and considering the fact that it's supposed to be an origin story, it is hard to see exactly how this retelling will eventually play into the main story. Typically, a backstory is designed to tell an untold story, and even though in such a case it is fine to deviate away from the source material, ultimately it still needs to play into the main show as the two are connected. Velma, on the other hand, is not connected to the original IP in any way whatsoever. Although I am personally willing to look past any type of sex or race swap, it is hard to look past the blatant disrespect this show has for the Scooby-Doo IP. In this version of the story, Velma is presented as the leader of the gang and also the founder, while in the original, Fred is an extremely intelligent and thoughtful leader who brought the gang together to solve mysteries. In Velma, he is reduced to a complete idiot with no leadership capabilities, let alone the ability to solve mysteries. In this show, he pretty much acts like every woke person thinks a white man acts. He is your stereotypical scumbag who respects nothing and is entitled to everything. Personally, I do not mind the stereotype if written in a clever way, but sadly the story surrounding him just falls flat, and with it the stereotype as well. Now, it is not lost on me that stereotypes have existed in shows before, and sometimes they might not be the best, specifically when it comes to the portrayal of black people, so it will now be hypocritical to be upset over a white stereotype. But if your whole brand is built around how stereotypes are bad, then this is not the best look. Stereotypes are actually a massive debate point for the show, with many feeling that they do not do a great job representing people. Again, I am not soft enough to cry over a few jokes and stereotypes at the expense of a white person. We are all big boys, we can handle it. But at least try to back it with good writing, especially if you consider how intelligent and great the original Fred was. For me, I am not upset over the stereotype. Again, I can handle a joke at my expense. For me, it is more about the fact that they attached it to an existing character like Fred, who is nothing like this in the original show. You changed him so terribly that there is no way that this origin can possibly fit in with the main story. It might not sound like a massive change, but Fred is a big part of the original show, and reducing his character to an brain-dead idiot changes the whole premise of the show. Now, if his character was written in a better way, I think many people would have been more open to the change, but unfortunately, it just falls flat. Daff is another character who just does not fit the description of the original at all. Now, once again, this is a retelling, so certain changes can be overlooked, but it is hard to make the connection between this Daff and the one we have in Scooby-Doo. In a normal retelling, this would not be a problem, but considering that this is supposed to be an origin that leads to the main story, it is hard to imagine how they are going to take this current group and turn them into the best gang of mystery solvers that there is. Shaggy, I do not even want to address, because honestly, this version is not even worthy of the name. It is nothing personal against this version, I just do not see the connection at all. And again, I would like to remind everyone that these characters are supposed to be the younger versions of the Scooby Gang who eventually grow into their parts. None of that is going to happen here. Velma herself has been completely stripped of everything that made her great in the original, and instead we are now stuck with someone who only shares the name. In my honest opinion, they should have focused this show on Velma alone and not introduced any of the other characters this early on. A show focusing on solely Velma as she gets introduced to the rest of the gang later on one by one would have been way more meaningful. Something down the line of what Smallville did for their origin Superman story would have been way better, or even Wicked from Wizard of Oz. Now, I wish I could say that the change in characters and stripping away of their identities was the only thing that made this show bad, but unfortunately, it just goes so much deeper than that. All of the things that I just mentioned could have still been forgiven if the story was good and they were able to capture your attention. But sadly, this show just falls completely flat when it comes to the actual narrative. Within the first 2 minutes of the show, they made 5 references to breaking the fourth wall, and how they are not like any other show. They focus an extended period of time focusing on the race of their characters, including pointing out that Daff is in fact not white, but rather Asian, something that I did not even know until it was pushed down my throat 10 times in the opening 5 minutes. They also make it a very strong point to go after other TV shows consistently out how everything is just terrible now, and it does very little to actually address any plot points. The whole show focuses on social commentary instead of telling the story, and as a result, it is very hard to get invested. When I watch Velma, I want to just sit back and get scooped up in a great and fun story. Instead, I need to constantly be reminded of how racist and sexist I am for daring to be born with a certain sex and race. Although I would not go as far as to say that this is the worst show that I have ever watched. There are plenty of people who actually disagrees, as this is now one of the lowest rated cartoons ever. Pop Buzz in their article reports, Velma has officially just become the #1 worst rated animated series of all time on IMDb. Ever since Velma debuted on HBO Max earlier this month, it has divided the internet. Written as a prequel show that explains how Mystery Inc. formed, Velma is a very adult take on Scooby-Doo. As well as featuring a lot of nudity and gore, Velma makes multiple jokes about Fred having a tiny penis, and on top of that, Daphne secretly deals drugs at school. Velma recently made history as the first ever Scooby-Doo related show or movie in which Velma and Daphne kiss. Now, it's making history all over again, but this time for less favorable reasons. Velma is now IMDb's worst rated animated series. At this point, I do not think that it should come as a surprise to anyone that the show is being reviewed this poorly. They decided to go after the fans almost instantly and completely destroyed everything about the original. It is obvious that fans would push back. Although it is easy to rage bait, and this is exactly what they did here, it is not so easy to hold on to a fan base for an extended period of time. Now, sadly, it should be noted that the trend of writing poorly produced knockoffs of original IPs that completely tank is likely set to continue, as it is an easy way to make money. You will notice that with these shows, but it is never the top-tier good talent that does this type of thing. It is usually those struggling to get work and knows that no one would watch what they put out if it is not attached to something that already exists. These people put out these poorly written shows, and even if they manage to just push out 1 or 2 seasons, they still make millions of dollars. There might be some losses, but typically those losses are with the network and not with the creators. Nindy, for instance, already received her salary for Velma. Even if this season is the last or she only gets 1 more season, she will still make more money than she would have if on her own. Due to this, these people will continue to do it because they continue to make guaranteed money. If the show fails, which it always does, they call you a sexist racist and just move on to the next project. It is a terrible trend, but one likely set to continue.